You think you know what we feared. The diving fighter, the jabbo, the scream of a thunderbolt falling out of the sun. Yes, we feared that. Every gunner did. But a scream you can fear honestly. A scream tells you where death is coming from. The thing that truly broke us did not scream. It puttered, slow and small and patient. An engine no louder than a motorbike crossing a field. When we heard that sound in the summer of 1944, grown men, gunners of the German army, the proudest artillery on earth, went still as the dead. We killed our engines. We held our breath, and we prayed it had not seen us. Let me tell you why.
My name does not matter now. I am an old man, and the others are gone. But in that summer, I was 19, a cannoneer, a gunner, on a 10.5-centimeter howitzer in a battery that had crossed half Europe without learning to be afraid. I had been told the artillery was the king of battle. I believed it. I had seen our guns turn villages to dust before the infantry ever moved. I came to Normandy proud. I left it a man who flinched at the sound of a child's toy. Between those two men stands one machine. Cloth, wood, no guns, no armor. And I am going to make you understand it.
On my third day at the front, an officer gave us an order I thought was a joke. He said, "When the little plane comes, do not fire on it. Do not fire your gun, do not fire your rifle, do not even fire the flag."
To understand the fall, you must understand the height we fell from. German artillery did not win battles by being seen. We won by being everywhere and nowhere. Guns hidden kilometers behind the line, throwing steel onto men who never saw the weapon that killed them.
There was only one thing that broke the rule, and it came from the sky. The fighter bomber. The jabbo. By 1944, the Americans and the British owned the air over France, and a column caught on an open road in daylight was a column of dead men. We learned to move at night, to hug the hedges, to read the sky before we read the map. But the jabbo, at least, was an honest enemy. It was loud. It was fast.
They sent us into the bocage. If you have not seen it, picture a country built to blind a gunner. Small fields, each one walled by an earth bank and a hedge older than the church. Sunken lanes roofed over with branches. A place where you could not see 100 meters in any direction. For the infantry, it was a nightmare of ambush. For us, it should have been a fortress, endless cover to hide the guns. And for a few days, it was. We dug in, we threw nets over the howitzers, we cut branches, and we vanished. We felt safe under all that green.
I saw it first on a bright, still morning, the kind of weather we had learned to hate. A small shape, far off, very low, moving so slowly it seemed to hang in the air, like a hawk that has forgotten how to dive. Pale, thin, fragile, you could see the struts, the high wing, the spindle of it. We laughed at it. A boy in our crew waved at it. It did not look like war. It looked like something a farmer's son would fly on a Sunday afternoon, lazy circles over the wheat. One of the older men did not laugh. He watched it the way you watch a snake decide.
A veteran named Drexler grabbed me by the collar and threw me flat. "Kill it," he hissed. "Not the plane, the engine, the noise. Get down, do not move." I lay in the wet grass with my heart going, and I did not understand. Across the field, a younger crew did not have a Drexler. They kept working their gun. They even traversed it, a few of them shouting, thinking to knock the toy out of the sky for sport. I watched the little plane bank, slow and calm, and circle once, the way you would circle a name on a map. Then it turned and puttered away over the hedges. I had reached 40 when the world ended. Not one shell, all of them. From batteries we could not see, kilometers apart, the Americans had done a thing we barely believed possible. They had timed the firing so that every shell from every gun arrived in the same second. They called it time on target. There is no warning whistle building, no first round to dive away from. The air simply turns to iron and fire in a single breath across a whole field. Where the laughing crew had stood, there was now smoke and turned earth, and things I will not describe. They had given the eye 90 seconds of their noise and movement. The eye had given them to the guns.
Understand what that little machine truly was, because it was not a weapon. It was a pair of eyes joined to 1,000 guns by a radio. One man, in a cloth aeroplane, with a map on his knee and a wireless set at his side, could see our hidden battery and speak a few words, and the massed artillery of an entire division would answer him. It has been said since that no single aircraft of the whole war, save the one that carried the atom bomb, could bring more destruction onto a target than that unarmed toy. I did not need the histories to tell me. I had counted to 40 in the grass, and I had seen what the 40th second brought.
Now you understand the order I had thought was cowardice. Do not fire on the little plane. Not because we could not hit it, though it was cruelly hard to hit, and I will come to that. We were forbidden to fire because firing was speaking. Every muzzle flash, every line of tracer reaching up, every gun that worked while the eye was above, was a man standing up in the dark and shouting, "Here I am." The plane did not even need to see the gun. It only needed to see the flash, the smoke, the movement, and pass the word. To be noticed by the eye was to be marked for the earth-shattering second that followed. So we learned to become nothing.
Our whole lives narrowed to one rule: be invisible from above. We fired only when the sky was empty, and the moment that engine sound came on the wind, we froze where we stood. Cooks, drivers, gunners, officers, like a field of statues. We moved the guns only at dusk and at dawn. We learned to hate clear weather, the way a sailor hates a calm that strands him. A low grey sky was a blanket. A blue one was a death sentence. We covered the bright brass. We doused the cook fires. We buried our refuse so no fresh-turned earth would show. Men who had stormed across France now spent their days lying still in ditches, listening, always listening, for the putter of a lawnmower in the sky. You will ask how a slow, harmless plane could frighten us more than a fighter that could kill us outright. I have thought about it for 60 years. It is this: the fighter wanted you, one truck, one gun, one man, and if it chose another, you lived. The fighter was a death you could sometimes dodge, but the eye did not want to kill you. The eye wanted to see you, and what it saw, it gave to the guns. We tried, of course, to break the chain. The chain was simple, and that was the horror of it. Eye, radio, fire direction, guns. Cut any link, and we lived. But we could not jam the wireless. There were too many, and they changed their words. We could not reach the fire direction centers, those quiet tents far behind the line, where men with slide rules and maps turned one pilot's voice into the aim of 100 barrels. The Americans had made an orchestra of their artillery. and the little plane was the conductor's baton. And the conductor flew where our fighters rarely came, and our flak dared not fire. The only link we could touch was the eye itself. And the eye, it turned out, was almost impossible to kill.
It should have been easy. A machine of cloth and wood, slower than a motor car, flown by one man with no gun to shoot back. But try it. It flew so low it seemed to drag its wheels through the hedge tops, and a low, slow target crossing your front is the hardest thing in the world to lead with a heavy gun. Our flak was built to reach high, fast bombers, not to swat an insect skimming the fields. And the moment our flak did fire, it lit a signpost in the sky pointing straight down at the battery, and the eye, or its brothers, would mark the flash, and the guns would come. So to shoot at the eye was very often to kill yourself.
There was a man in the next battery. I will call him Sepp, for his people may still live. Sepp could not bear it. A proud gunner, a good one, and the stillness ate at him worse than fear. To lie in a ditch and be looked at by a toy was to him a kind of spitting on everything we were. One clear morning the plane came low over his position, slow, almost insolent, and something in Sepp broke. He swung the light flak around himself, screaming, and he fired. Tracer climbed toward the little machine. For one heartbeat, every man who saw it felt the old joy. Strike back, hit the thing, be a soldier again. The plane wobbled, and then it steadied, and it turned, and it flew away. Sepp stood by his smoking gun. Whether Sepp hit it, I never learned, and it did not matter, because hitting it was never the point. The point was that he had fired. He had spoken. He had drawn a bright line of tracer from the earth to the sky with his own battery at the bottom of it. The eye had not even needed to find them slowly. Sepp had drawn the map himself. They had perhaps 4 minutes. I am told some of them ran. It did not help. When the time on target came down, it took the gun and the pit and Sepp and the men who had cheered them, all in the single second I had learned to dread. After that, no one in our sector argued with the order again. We had seen what a moment of pride bought.
They grew crueler as they grew confident, and cleverer, too. We began to suspect the little planes were not only hunting us, they were fishing. One would fly slow and low and almost lazy across a quiet sector, doing nothing, daring some tired, angry gun crew to take the shot, and the gun that took the bait wrote its own death sentence in tracer. I believe, though I cannot prove it, that on some days the eye killed more of us by tempting us to fire than by anything it saw on its own. That is what it had done to the German army, the king of battle, by that autumn. It had turned our own courage into a weapon it could use against us. The brave died first.
After a time, you did not need to see the plane to feel it. The sound lived in our heads. Men would freeze at a distant tractor, at a motorbike, at the drone of a real bomber far away, certain the eye was on them. We argued in whispers, even on grey days. We slept badly, those of us who slept. A gunner is meant to serve the loudest machine on the battlefield, and we had become small, quiet animals, flinching at the sky, reading the clouds like frightened farmers. The young ones took it worst. I watched boys who had been fearless in the spring become old men by September, their hands shaking over the breech, their eyes always going up, 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 to that pale, empty blue. And then, when we thought the little plane had shown us every cruelty it owned,
a rumor came down the line that we refused to believe. The Americans, it was said, had taken one of their toys, one of these unarmed observation planes, and bolted weapons to it. Rockets strapped to the wing struts of a thing made of cloth. One mad pilot, they said, was flying his lawn chair straight at German tanks and killing them with it. We laughed, the way we had laughed at the plane itself on that first bright morning.
His name, we learned long after, was Carpenter, an American major who could not stand to watch the war from above when he might join it. He lashed 6 bazooka tubes to his little plane, named it for a sweetheart back home, and dived it at armor the way the Jarbos dived, only slower, lower, close enough to see the faces of the men he hunted. They say he crippled tanks and scattered columns from a machine a strong wind could have folded. To the Americans, he was a daring story. To us, he was something worse than a fighter ace, because he proved there was no safe distance and no weapon too small. If even the toy could kill a tank, then nothing on our side of the line was safe from the sky.
But the rockets were never the true terror, and I want you to see this clearly. One mad major with rockets was a story. The thing that beat us was duller and far worse. There were so many of the little planes, and they cost so little, that we could not kill our way free of them. Shoot one down, on the rare day you could, and 2 more would be over you by afternoon. They were made of cloth and engine and a brave man and a radio, and the Americans had a sky full of them. We were trained to win by destroying the enemy's weapon. You cannot destroy a thing the enemy has 1,000 of and can build in a barn. We were not fighting a machine. We were fighting an idea we had no answer for.
In the autumn, the order came for a counterattack, and with it a chance, we thought, to be soldiers again. For days we worked in darkness, moving the heavy guns up by night, hiding them by first light, massing a strength we had not dared to gather in months. Massed guns, that was the old religion, the king of battle clearing his throat. Everything depended on one thing, that the Americans not learn what we had hidden in those woods until our shells were already falling on them. We were careful. We were silent. We were proud of how well we had vanished. On the grey morning before the attack, the sky to the west cleared, and out of that clean blue came the sound I have spent this whole account teaching you to fear. It crossed us once, slow and high enough to be safe, and it did not hurry. It did not need to. It had seen in one pass the thing we had spent a week hiding. Guns where no guns had been. Fresh tracks, massed strength. It spoke its few words into the radio and flew home to its breakfast. We never fired the counterattack. Before our barrage could begin, theirs began, and it fell exactly where our hidden guns were massed, because they knew now exactly where that was. The strength we had gathered in the dark was broken in the light before it could speak. I stood in the smoke afterward and understood, finally, that we could no longer even gather.
People ask when a soldier knows his war is lost. They expect me to say Stalingrad, or the landings, or the day I first saw the endless ships. It was none of those. I knew on an ordinary morning in a Normandy ditch, when I caught myself, a German gunner, a servant of the proudest artillery on earth, pressing my face into the mud and holding my breath, so that a plane made of cloth, flown by one man at the speed of a bicycle, would not hear me, and would not see me, and would pass me by. In that moment, I was not the king of battle. I was prey.
From then on, we fought the war lying down. The day belonged to the eye, so we surrendered the day. We moved at night like thieves in our own lines, and at the first paling of the east we went to ground and became statues again until dark. A battery that cannot fire by day is half a battery. An army that cannot move by day is an army with its legs cut. We were still brave, you understand. I will not let anyone say the German gunner lost his nerve. We were brave, and we were skilled, and we were beaten. And those three things can all be true at once. We were beaten by a machine that never fired a shot at us, flown by men who only ever looked.
After the war, I read the official accounts, ours and theirs, hunting for the thing that had broken us. The manuals spoke of tanks and tonnage, of divisions and fuel, of grand arrows on grand maps. And all of it was true, and none of it was the truth I had lived. No staff officer wished to write the sentence that the artillery of the German Reich was unmade in the West by an unarmed civilian aeroplane and a man with a radio. It is too small. It is too humiliating. It does not fit on a monument. So they left it out, and they wrote of grander causes, and the real reason crawled out of the histories at the speed of a bicycle and was forgotten. That is why I am telling you. Someone should say the small true thing aloud.
And so, at last, the order. Do not shoot it down. By the end, I would have given that order myself, in my sleep, in my grave. To shoot at the eye was to speak, and to speak was to die. And the only voice left to the German gunner, the loudest soldier on the battlefield, was silence. When the little plane appeared, we did not roar. We did not fire. We went still, and we went quiet, and we made ourselves into earth, and we prayed. That is the answer to the question you came here with. That is why German gunners went silent the moment the tiny plane appeared. Not from cowardice, from the hardest lesson the war ever taught us, that the thing which sees you has already beaten the thing which can only kill. Count the cost, if you can bear arithmetic. A fighter cost a fortune and a year to build, and a long-trained pilot to fly. A battleship cost a nation. The little plane that beat us cost less than a staff car, could be built in a week, and was flown by a man taught in a summer. And it took from us more than any wonder weapon the Reich ever dreamed of. Our own officers admitted it afterward, quietly to their interrogators, that Allied air observation, more than any tank or any bomb, had made it impossible to fight by day, impossible to mass, impossible to win. The most expensive thing in that whole war was our pride. The thing that broke it was the cheapest object in the sky.
I think most of all of the ones who could not learn the silence, the young, the proud, the brave, Sepp at his smoking gun, the laughing crew on that first bright morning, all the men whose courage told them to stand and strike, and who were given, for it, the single dreadful second of the time on target. The eye killed the cowards last, and the brave first, because bravery in that war meant firing, and firing meant speaking, and speaking meant death. I have carried this for 60 years, that I lived because I learned to lie in the mud and do nothing, and better men than I died because they could not. There is no medal for that. There is only an old man telling you their story, so that the doing nothing.
If you take one thing from a dying gunner, take this, for it is older than the war and will outlive your own. Power is not the loudest thing on the field. It is not the biggest gun or the thickest armor or the proudest name. Power is the eye, the one who sees first and is not seen. We had the guns, they had the eye. The eye won, and it will always win, in any war and any room and any age.
You who were born long after, who know our war from films of storming beaches and burning tanks and great brave noise, I want you to carry an uncomfortable picture home. The German gun line in the West, the artillery that had terrified a continent, was brought low not by a secret cannon or a miracle of engineering, but by a flying lawn chair with a wireless set and an ordinary man inside it. There was no thunderclap. There was a putter, like a lawnmower over a hedge, and then there was silence, as 1,000 proud men pressed themselves into the dirt. Remember that the next time you are told that the loudest, the largest, the most expensive thing must surely be the strongest. We believed that.
The war ended, as you know. I lived, which still surprises me. But the silence the eye taught me never fully left. For years, a small engine in a clear sky would stop my heart in the street. I would feel my body wanting to lie down, to be earth, to be nothing. My wife never understood why a man should go pale at the sound of a light aircraft on a Sunday afternoon. I never tried to explain it. How do you tell someone who was not there that you were trained, body and soul, by 90 seconds of arithmetic, to fear a toy more than you feared God? The guns I served are scrap now. The fear they put in me by way of that little plane outlived them, and very nearly outlived me.
I have told almost no one this in 60 years, because for most of my life it sounded like an old man's excuse. We were not beaten by your tanks, you see, but by a tiny plane. Oh yes, it has the ring of a coward dressing up his defeat. But I am near the end now, and the others who could say it with me are gone, and I find I cannot let the small true thing die unspoken. So I have set it down plainly for whoever will listen, a record from the bottom of the chain, from the man in the mud, of how the proudest artillery on earth was taught to hold its breath by an unarmed plane and a radio. Believe it or not as you choose, I was there, counting to 40 in the grass. They still call the artillery the king of battle. Perhaps somewhere it still is. But I knew the king when he learned to crawl. I knew him lying flat in a French ditch with mud in his mouth, holding his breath while a farmer's aeroplane drew lazy circles over his crown. The throne was real once. I served it proudly. And I watched a thing of cloth and string and one brave man's eyes take that throne apart without firing a shot, simply by looking down and speaking softly into a radio. If there is a lesson the gun ever learned, it is the one the eye taught it in the summer of 1944. The watcher rules the warrior. Always, in the end.
I am an old man in a quiet country now, and the sky over my house is full of harmless small planes on fine afternoons. I have made a kind of peace with the sound. When it comes over the hedge, that low, patient putter, I no longer fall to the ground. But I do stop, I do look up, and for one breath I am 19 again, a gunner of a beaten king, learning the lesson that broke an army, that the thing which sees you has already won, and the only mercy left is to be still and small and silent, and to pray the eye flies on. It always flew on.
Here is the strange thing, the thing even the victors may not fully know. The men who flew those little planes thought of themselves as observers, humble, unarmed, useful, but lesser than the fighter pilots and the bomber crews who got the glory and the films. They were never told, I think, that to the man in the German mud, they were the most terrible thing in the entire sky. The fighters frightened our bodies. The little plane frightened our souls, because it took away the one thing every soldier needs to keep fighting, the belief that he can hide, that he can choose his moment,
that he is not simply being watched and weighed and handed to the guns. Those quiet pilots unmade us, and most of them never knew the size of what they did.
So take my warning, you who are strong, you who are loud, you who are sure that the biggest weapon wins. We were all of those things. We had the finest guns and the proudest gunners and a doctrine that had conquered half a world. And we were brought to lie in ditches like hunted animals by the cheapest, slowest, gentlest-looking machine in the war. Because it could do the one thing our magnificence could not. It could see us, and we could not stop being seen. Whatever your battlefield is, and everyone has one, that is all I have. I was a cannoneer of the German army. I served the king of battle, and I watched him fall. Not to a greater king, but to a watching eye in a cloth aeroplane and a calm voice on a radio. I have given you the truth from the bottom of the chain, the truth too small and too shaming for the manuals, the truth that crawled away at 65 miles an hour and was forgotten. Do with it what you will. But when you next hear a small engine droning slow and low across a summer field, think of a 19-year-old gunner pressing his face into French mud, counting to 40.
And yet, if you think the watching eye was the strangest thing that broke our faith in winning, you have not heard the worst of it. There was something else in those months that frightened the German command far more than any plane. And it was this. Again and again, the Americans seemed to know our orders before our own men did. Attacks we had told no one of met defenders already dug in and waiting. We hunted for the traitor in our ranks for years,